Hello and welcome to the Stool Pigeons. I'm Jack Jameswood.
And I'm Harrison Davenport.
Harrison, I think you have the story for us this week.
I do. This story comes to us from r/cheating stories titled The Discovery That Changed My Life. This story has taken place over the last 6 months. I wanted to write the story while the events were still fresh in my mind. Spending countless hours replaying the same events may have given me tunnel vision, so I'm hoping for fresh perspectives. I'm going to start my story with some background information. If I had to describe myself in one word, it would be hardworking. I've had a strong work ethic from a very young age. I grew up in the rural South in a middle-class family. My dad owns a masonry business, and my mom owns a dry cleaning business that was started by my granddad. Neither of my parents attended college, but it was always their dream for me to be able to do so. My parents loved telling the story about how before they had even combined their checking accounts, they opened a 529 plan for my college. A 529 plan is just a college investment account you can open for your kids, for those that were wondering. I'd like to go ahead and fast forward now. I ended up doing very well in school and was able to attend a very prestigious school in the Northeast. To say that I was a fish out of water would be an understatement. I was a kid with a thick Southern drawl from a blue-collar family. I decided that I wanted to try to meet people before the semester began, so I applied for a pre-orientation program. This was a program that allowed incoming freshmen to participate in a trip with 10 other incoming freshmen and 3 current students. I remember feeling excited when I got my acceptance letter because these programs only had a limited number of spaces. We had to attend a meeting a few days before the trip to go over the details and have a casual dinner with the group. I arrived just as things were about to get started, and everyone was instructed to take their seats. We were told to take any seat in the circle because we were going to play the traditional icebreaker game. The first person to introduce themselves was Morgan. She was one of the leaders of the trip. I was immediately drawn to her because, like me, she was also from the South. I should also add that she was the most attractive woman in the room. I had to keep reminding myself to focus on her eyes. She explained that the purpose of the trip was something the school referred to as responsible outdoor recreation. Looking back, I'm still not sure I know what that means. She continued by saying that the trip was about getting to know other people through camping, kayaking, and an assortment of other outdoor activities. The icebreaker game and dinner went well. I even made a few friends that I hung out with leading up to the trip. When the day of the trip arrived, I arrived at the designated meeting location feeling a sense of nervousness. My friends Andrew, Matt, and Laura were making fun of me because they knew I had a crush on Morgan. As we were loading our bags and camping gear into one of the vans, a BMW came speeding through the parking lot. Laura tapped me on the arm and gestured in the direction of the car. Inside was Morgan and some guy that I didn't know. I watched them kiss, and Morgan got out of the car. I felt disappointed that she had a boyfriend, but I also knew there were plenty of fish in the sea. I had just arrived at a major university in a large city. I didn't need to go all in on day one. Before we arrived at the campsite, we stopped at a small gas station off of the interstate. One of the leaders made an announcement. Last stop if you want beer. You can imagine how excited a group of 18-year-olds were when they found out they were going to be able to drink on the trip. Andrew, Matt, Laura, and I all decided to pitch in and got a few cases for the weekend. After we set up our tents and started a fire, the drinking games began. The first game we played was beer pong. One of the team leaders announced, the leaders get first pick on their teammates, and then everyone else pair up after that. Morgan was the first to pick. All I heard her say was you, and point in my direction. I remember turning red and stupidly looking around, assuming she had picked someone else. Andrew said, dude, she picked you. Matt and Laura quietly did that stupid ooh noise that kids make in grade school. I walked up and introduced myself to her again. She smiled and told me that Southerners needed to stick together. I don't believe I've ever been more motivated to succeed at something in my life. I was honestly a mediocre beer pong player at best, but I think I only missed one shot the entire night. I could tell that Morgan was impressed, and I was beaming with confidence. After we won the tournament, Morgan and I sat next to the campfire and continued to have a few more drinks. I don't know how much time had passed, but what happened next is something I'll never forget. Morgan whispered in my ear to meet her in her tent in 20 minutes. She said the group leaders were the only ones on the trip that got tents to themselves. I was speechless and just shook my head up and down. When I unzipped the tent, Morgan was sitting inside completely naked. She was lying horizontally across her air mattress and looked like a goddess. She didn't say a word and just tapped her hand on the air mattress, signaling for me to come lay next to her. When I went in to kiss her, she stopped me. She laid flat on her back and pushed my head in between her legs. I guess my hot streak from the beer pong table carried over into the bedroom. Based on her reactions, I'd found the sweet spot over and over again. She put protection on for me and rode me to completion. I wish I could say it lasted all night, but I was proud that I was able to make it 10 minutes. I know that was a long background story, but all of the details will be relevant for the second part. I ended up marrying Morgan when I graduated from college. We've now been married for a little over 3 years. We both got jobs in a large metro city in the South so that we could be closer to our parents. Morgan and I had essentially been inseparable since the first night in the woods. Everything had been going great with our careers, and we're even talking about having children. One of the great things about the city that we moved to is that my friends Matt and Laura also live there. They started dating a couple months after the camping trip and have been together ever since. They were the couple we could always count on for date nights, and they even introduced us to some other people they had met through Laura's job. They are what most people would consider a perfect match. One day, I randomly got a call from Laura during the workday. This wasn't out of the ordinary since it was a Friday and we were supposed to get drinks with her and Matt later. I ignored the call since I was in a meeting and opened my phone to send her a text message. When I opened the message thread, there were already bubbles. When the message came through, it felt like my heart stopped momentarily. The message read, "Matt is having an affair." I told her I would call her as soon as I got out of the meeting. When I finally spoke to her, I could tell she had been crying, but seemed to be doing okay under the circumstances. She said she figured it out after she found nude photos of another woman on Matt's phone. I asked her if she recognized the person in the photos, to which she said no. The woman's face was not visible in the photos. The rest of the conversation consisted of me telling her how sorry I was and that I would be there if she needed anything. After I left work, I called my wife to tell her what had happened. She was completely shocked by the news, and she couldn't believe that Matt would do that to Laura. When I got home, my wife had already poured herself a tall glass of wine and had a glass waiting for me. I told her the fact that this could happen to Matt and Laura made me feel sick to my stomach. I asked her if she noticed any signs of Matt acting strange, and she said she thought he had been completely normal the last few times we had all gotten together. Over the next month or two, I would talk to Laura on the phone at least weekly to check in on her. I'd also developed a bit of an obsession with Matt's social media profiles to see if he had posted any photos with another woman. Laura had asked me to check in the beginning because she deleted him on everything. Matt had not posted anything. The last photo he had posted was a group photo with the four of us. After a few months, things seemed to finally be settling down. My wife and I went on a vacation to Key West to celebrate our 3-year wedding anniversary. While we were there, Laura tried to call me a few times. This struck me as odd because she knew we were on our anniversary trip. She also wasn't replying to my texts asking her what was going on. My assumption was that she was just having a bad day and needed someone to talk to. About a week later, I got a text from Laura telling me that we needed to meet up at her house. She had something that she needed to show me. She sounded exhausted, almost as if she hadn't slept in a few days. Her thoughts seemed scattered. I left work and went directly to Laura's house. She looked like a complete mess when she answered the door. Before we sat down in the living room, she gave me a hug and told me that she was sorry. I told her that she didn't have anything to be sorry for. Then she handed me an iPad with a photo of my wife and I from our vacation the week prior. I asked her what was going on, because she was legitimately starting to frighten me at this point. She didn't say anything and proceeded to draw a circle on my wife's leg with her finger. I told her she had to tell me what was going on. She then asked me if I'd ever noticed the small birthmark on my wife's upper leg. I'm sure I'd noticed it, but it wasn't anything that really stood out to me. What about the mole about 6 inches below her left breast? Once again, not something I really think about. She then swiped to the next photo of a nude woman's body and asked if I noticed any similarities. My heart sank into my chest. The marks on the two women were almost identical. I then went into a state of denial and then started to have what I can only assume was a panic attack. It has been a week since Laura showed me the photo. That was almost certainly my wife. I feel like I'm the crazy one now. I've gone through my wife's phone, laptop, email, social media accounts, and iPad, and have not found anything that would suggest something is going on between her and Matt. I also checked our phone records and came up empty. I'm ashamed to admit this, but I've had a GPS tracker on her car the last week, and she has not deviated from her usual routine. I feel like I should say something, but I don't want to sink my relationship with an accusation that turns out to not be true. I would appreciate any advice on what to do next. Thank you. Okay, Jack. Well, that concludes this story. What are your thoughts?
Well, my first thought, relates back to the old adage, never marry a woman who puts out for being impressed by beer pong.
That's a very good point. Yeah, she was very impressed. I mean, he must have really just been crushing his shots. He didn't really go into how much they had been drinking, so I assume that was also a factor.
More likely than not, actually, if you went back and were to watch that evening, he probably didn't do that good at beer pong, and he probably didn't last 10 minutes either. Well, and the other thing that I was thinking about, Harrison, this relates actually to the podcast we have. If anything, all the technology and the apps and everything that leaves breadcrumbs for your significant other, these things are all bad. And so my advice to people out there is only date the Amish.
100%. I don't think they allow people to date outsiders, but I think people should give it a try. Maybe Mennonites. So next steps for this guy, you think he should confront his wife?
I actually just think he should cheat with Laura because it already seems like they have a pretty good rapport.
Yeah, it does. It does. It seems like they're very good friends. Because he didn't really mention that he reached out to Matt or talked to Matt. So I guess he's been Team Laura, and it was pretty obvious to everyone.
Well, it also seems like he's already having an emotional affair with her anyway, since she's calling him on his anniversary with Morgan, and he's picking it up and then becoming emotionally involved in their relationship and caring. So maybe he's not revealing everything that's going on with the relationship.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'll be curious if he has anything else to add to this, because it sounds like he's about to lose his mind.
Oh, totally agree.
All right, Jack. Well, I guess that concludes this one. Everyone, usual reminders, our premium episodes are available on Patreon. Our podcast is available on all major platforms. We release that weekly. And please remember to hit the subscribe button. Thank you.